Hey everyone, it's Dave here and Darren over there. We're your two old bloggers. Been commenting publicly on the Minnesota Vikings for over 2.5 decades apiece. Yeah, it's been a long time. But we are in one of those magical seasons, it seems like. We're going to find out. But today is, as usual, 3 themes, and we're going to get pretty much in depth. And I want to welcome Drewster. And, of course, Peter, welcome to the show. First theme, we're going to talk about the signing of Danny Dimes, and does it matter? Secondly, we're going to do This Week in Vikings Land, and boy, have we got that packed full of stuff. And thirdly, we're going to preview the game of the week. Your Minnesota Vikings hosting the Arizona Cardinals at US Bank Stadium tomorrow at noon Central. So let's get it going. On to old bloggers. Let's rock. Vikings First and SKOL presents This Week in Vikings Land with Darren and Dave, your two old bloggers. Hey, everybody. We're back. Hey, Darren, how's things in the Great White North?
Excellent. I guess, going to be putting up the Christmas decorations today, Dave, and I hear you're into the same sort of process. So that time of year where we get thinking about playoffs and who's going to make it and who isn't. And so great time of the year. Lots of anticipation.
I want to welcome Anthony, Chevy, Delton, and Bob. Bob, I love your prediction. 18-2, baby. 18-2. All right. Let's start off with the news of the week. The big news. And we're going to... What happened to my theme one? Oh, there it is.
It's up there.
We signed Danny Dimes.
We did. This is one of those things where when you're doing your show on Saturday and events happen on Wednesday, this has been discussed probably ad nauseum by every Viking show that there is. But hey, got to touch on it, and we are going to touch on it today. And Wednesday, the rumors, the speculation all ended. But Danny Dimes made his decision that he was going to sign with the Vikings, even though he had other options, probably plenty of options. And so, with all that hubbub, that's the news cycle goes, and the questions on Jones joining the Vikings is like, what? You're wrong, Drew. I'm much better looking, and I think Jones has his nose broken, which is yet to happen with me. He's got.
But Drew, I thought the same thing when I was doing the hard work.
I'll tell you one thing. I'd like to have his money.
Yes.
And also his athletic ability. But yeah, I wanted to get into the Danny Jones signing. And hey, Steven, I'm doing great. I think Dave has been eating Mexican food all week, is doing great. So yes, we are doing fine, I think. But yeah, Jones. At this point in the year with the signing of Jones, I guess the question is like, how big of a deal is this for the Vikings to have signed Daniel Jones? And the first thing is that it's not that big of a deal, because hopefully, and I think probably, we're not going to need Jones. He's never going to see the field. And as long as Darnold is healthy and keeps on playing like he's playing, and Darnold has been playing for the most part, I think between very good to great most of the season. Keep that up, and Danny Dimes is going to be on the sideline, maybe not even dressed for the rest of the season. But still, I think, to me, I like the signing. I did right from the get-go. The one reason is you cannot tell me that you cannot convince me in any way, shape, or form that a quarterback room that includes Darnold, Nick Mullins, Daniel Jones, and they've kept Brett Rippon is not better than a quarterback room that has Darnold, Nick Mullins, and Brett Rippon. It's just better. And if we learned anything last year, it's that you can never have enough quality quarterbacks on the roster. Because last year we used 4 of them, and a couple of them really probably shouldn't have been used at all, but that's how it rolled. So you strengthen your quarterback room, the most important position on the team. That's good. Second thing that I like about it is that Jones is very mobile. He's one of the best scrambling quarterbacks in the NFL. If he has to, and that's something that where Nick Mullins is not a very mobile quarterback. And so right there on a team, if you had to play Mullins and or Jones on a team where, as we've seen, the quarterback holds the ball a long time because we've got a lot of pass routes that take a long time to develop, having a quarterback who can escape pressure whenever it arrives is a good thing. And that's something Jones can do better than Nick Mullins if pressed into play. So I like that. Third thing is the extensive starting experience. Yes, Mullins has started a fair bit in the NFL, although it happened much earlier in his career and many years ago. Jones has started, I think, 70 games in the NFL, a lot more than Nick Mullins has. And he started 2 playoff games, and he won one of them. And we all know who he beat in that game. So you've got that guy, a guy who's been through the wars, has playoff experience, has won a playoff game in a very tough environment. That's something Nick Mullins cannot say. That's a plus. I think also that, another big benefit of this is that it's far less, or it's less likely when you've got Jones in the game that he's going to turn the ball over and throw interceptions. Although he's thrown a fair amount in his time, not nearly as many on a per pass ratio as Nick Mullins has. And so, yeah, I think you lose a little bit of the gunslinger mentality and the the chuck it and fuck it kind of attitude. If you were to decide that Daniel Jones is going to be your backup instead of Nick Mullins at some point in time. But for me, if the decision making is better from Jones than Mullins, I'll take that over the gunslinger and taking risks and chances, because I think we've seen with Nick Mullins is that the risks have oftentimes outweighed the rewards of what he tries to do out there. As much as I find Nick Mullins like uber entertaining when he's out there, he's just a little bit too scary for me. I think the other thing that's really good about this is that it just gives the Vikings time. When you look at the backup next year, JJ McCarthy, I'm pretty sure he's going to be handed over the reins after the 2024 season and is going to be named the starting quarterback in 2025 as long as the knee checks out. And so you're going to need a backup for him. It's not going to be Sam Darnold. So, and Nick Mullins is on the last year of his contract. And so I think, what better way to suss out a veteran quarterback as a potential backup than to have Daniel Jones in the building day after day. You're interacting with him every day after day, seeing where he, seeing how he, gels with the team that you have and his teammates for about 3 months. That's like a head start on your who's going to be your backup quarterback scouting report. So that's great. And then the other thing that's good about it is that potentially if Jones gets added to the active roster at any point, you could get potentially a comp pick for him in 2026. I think the Rams got a 6th rounder for when they added Baker Mayfield to their active roster and played him a little bit. They got a 6th rounder this year. I'm not sure who that 6th rounder panned out. I didn't get a chance to see, but if you're paying a guy right now, they're paying him $100,000 to be on the practice squad. If they add him to the active roster, it'll be about $375,000. You could get a comp pick for Daniel Jones, even if you let him go when you've made that sort of investment in the NFL, that'd be a great return on investment. So a lot of reasons why I like this move. Again, I don't think, I hope we don't need him. The only thing I would question is that we're 11 games into a 17-game regular season, Dave, and I don't know, like, how quickly is Daniel Jones going to be able to pick up that playbook at a point where he could actually go in a game and operate the offense to its fullest extent or close to it. You don't want to have a situation like with Josh Dobbs where O'Connell's talking in his ear and translating plays. Is 6 games left in the season, in the regular season anyway, and hopefully we've got lots more beyond. But 6 games, is that enough? Because for him to get comfortable with the playbook, he's going to have to be a lot of cramming right now. And really, if you're looking at a backup situation, Nick Mullins, out of the skill position players that the Vikings have, Nick Mullins probably knows the offense is better than just about anyone, other than maybe Justin Jefferson, Ty Chandler, who's been here 3 years, Jalen Naylor, who's been here 3 years, and TJ Hawkinson, who's been here about 2.5 years. Other than those guys, Mullins would know the offense the best, the Kevin O'Connell offense the best. He'd be comfortable with it. He'd know the verbiage, the terminology, where everybody needs to be. I don't know if Daniel Jones can get to that point. I actually don't think he can in 6 weeks, 7 weeks. But certainly I think Daniel Jones, if it came to that and Darnold couldn't play, I think Daniel Jones is a better option to come in and replace Darnold than Mullins is. But he has some stuff to playbook wise and research. He's got that to overcome. And it should be noted, I think Kevin Seifert had an article last week after Jones had his media availability, and I didn't get a chance to hear KOC's presser, but it sounded like KOC is not really interested in taking Nick Mullins out of the backup role right now. And so maybe Jones is on the practice squad or your third string QB the whole year, which would be fine by me. But I think if something happened to Darnold, I'd be more comfortable putting Jones in there in a high pressure game than Mullins if he knows the offense. And I'm not sure that he's going to know the offense as well as Mullins at this late in the season. But either way, it's a like no risk, potential reward kind of signing, which I like. Dave, interested to get your thoughts on this as well.
First off, I want to address a question by Andrew. Andrew asked about, can somebody poach him off the practice squad? Theoretically, the option is there to do that. But as soon as they do, Minnesota can block it by elevating him to the 53-man roster. That will be an effective block. And plus, anybody on a practice squad can say no.
Mm-hmm.
They have the option to say, no, I'm happy where I'm at. I'm going to sit where I'm at. I think he chose Minnesota specifically to go to the Kevin O'Connell School of QB reclamation, and he's not going to allow himself to go anywhere else. He had a choice to go to
Las Vegas.
The Raiders was one of them, I heard, and I think there was another one I heard also. But they were garbage teams. And what's he going to do there? He's going to finish out the season. They're going to boot him afterwards. It wasn't worth it. He's not going to get anything out of it. He'd be under more pressure. And they're getting new coaches, so why bother? He'd rather come in and sit and learn something new, get the kumbaya-ism of Minnesota, love the place, because I'm sure there was people on the team that were calling and go, dude, you need to come here. This is the best place for you. And he's going to stay. And they will, I can almost guarantee 100%, they're going to elevate him to the 53-man roster sometime between now and week 18.
Mm-hmm.
So he qualifies for the comp pick formula. And that's all he has to be. Doesn't have to play, just be elevated up 1 week. So that means one person else is down. So that's all he's got to do. No big deal. That'll be simple. And it's a win-win situation. One, if he does leave after that, we get a comp pick. We're in the comp pick formula. We're eligible. Whether we get one or not, that depends on how many free agents we sign and all that other stuff. But we're eligible. And that's one more that's eligible. So that's likelihood of getting one because he's going to qualify as wherever he signs next. He's going to qualify. He's going to make enough money. That's not a big deal. Or he decides that he's okay with sitting a year as QB2 behind J.J. McCarthy, right? And being the mentor to J.J. McCarthy as well as the backup. I don't see a loss in that. I see that as a win-win situation no matter how it goes. I don't think the front office, be it Kwesi and Kevin, are going to screw this up at all. I think they're sitting there smiling, going, F the rest of the league and F Ryan Poles on a whole separate note. But they're sitting there. We now have 3 top 10 drafted quarterbacks in the room. And you kept forgetting J.J. McCarthy's in the room. Granted, he's not going to play this year, but he's learning. He's learning all the other stuff rather than on the field stuff this year as he rehabilitates. That's got to help. And they're sitting there going, hey, we may get him. We may get to keep him, pay him $10 million next year or whatever, $8 to $10 million as a bridge contract. Set him up for success. If JJ goes down or whatever, or is not ready, which, knock on wood, that shouldn't even be close to happening. He should be ready this summer. They've got it backed up and they've got a plan. In the meantime, he's getting all the love and attention and stroking by Kevin O'Connell and crew to make him an even better quarterback. And yes, I forgot who it was, but somebody had said he's good at very short and intermediate range passes, and that he is. Well, let's see how he develops after that. So it could be cool. Northvia says San Francisco is one of the other ones. Yep. So Drew's saying Courtney also told her she wants back up here. She hates Chicago. Hey, she was on top of the happenings down there at Hallis Hall all this week, and which is good for her. And I think
I was just I almost forgot to mention this, but when you were talking, it tweaked my memory again. But making this move like the Vikings did when they did, remember what Mark Wilf said in March when he was asked about injuries and how the Vikings 7-10 season went, and he said, yes, we had injuries, but Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, you got to be prepared for that. You've got to have a plan for that. And he said, those 2 guys, I think that's foremost in your mind. So I think, again, when the Vikings were considering, when Jones was available, I don't think that Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah didn't have those comments from Mark Wilf in their mind because they know how quickly a season can change when somebody gets their ankle stepped on or their knee twisted the wrong way, like what happened to Christian Darrisaw. All of a sudden, Darnold, God forbid, gone for the season. Then you're sticking in Nick Mullins as your backup quarterback when you could have maybe had Daniel Jones there eventually. The Vikings, Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah had that in the back of their mind, and they said, it's a quarterback position. We got a chance to add a guy who's been a starter in this league and has played well at times at that position. Go get him if he wants to come. And he wanted to come. And it's very interesting the way listening to Daniel Jones yesterday's comments. And Dave, do you get the feeling like he has almost been scarred by what has happened in New York? And that, like you said, he had the opportunity to go to Las Vegas. Like I said, shit team, coaching staff's probably going to change. They might start him. They might have started him against the Chiefs yesterday if they got him. And how was that going to turn out for Daniel Jones? Not very well. He wouldn't have known the playbook. It would have been a mess. And so his confidence would go down even further than it already is. I think that he's kind of like, he's looked at what's happened to Sam Darnold. he's looked at what's happened to other quarterbacks who have not taken the Sam Darnold route. And I think that he's looking at this, like you said, as, hey, I need to go to a stable situation. I need to go to a place where they have a good offensive infrastructure that can help me succeed, like I didn't have most of the time in New York. And I think that that's not, Tom Brady criticized Daniel Jones on Fox on Thanksgiving Day about him bailing on the Giants. And I get that. But I also, from Daniel Jones' side of things, if they weren't going to play him in New York, and he's got an opportunity to go to a place where that seems to have a great working culture, that has a head coach who understands how to develop and nurture quarterbacks, why wouldn't you take that opportunity? And Daniel Jones has, and I think it's the right move for him, and it might be the right move for the Vikings eventually.
No, I think it will, and it's following. You had Baker's resurgence, where he sat basically a year, and now Sam Darnold is top 10 quarterback in the league right now, and he never was. People are looking at this, if you're a quarterback, going, hey, I want to play for Kevin O'Connell. We had all, last year's draftees going, I want to play for Kevin O'Connell. I want to play. Whether it be Caleb Williams or J.J. McCarthy or whoever it was, they all wanted to play with Kevin O'Connell. So it's a bonus to Minnesota that we now have a coach that can do that and attract players like that. And I think it's great. So, and I think it's going to be good for Jones. Absolutely good. And Drew, I know I watched Kay Adams' show, and she said her boyfriend. Turns out she was being sarcastic or joking around. She is not his boyfriend. His girlfriend is his college sweetheart. So, but anyways, things could happen. Oh, you never know. She's had numerous boyfriends, from what I gather. So we'll see.
Surprise, surprise. Forlorn hope. I thought his comment was pretty. The comment's pretty funny. Brady is a backup in the booth.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's right. Great players don't always make great color commentators. Although it's his first year, cut him some slack. I think I do appreciate his in the games that I've seen him be the commentator. I like the fact that he does kind of get into like, well, when I was playing with the Patriots, this is how it was for me. A little bit of a, like, you want that player's perspective, but perspective of Tom Brady is a little bit different than the perspective of a lot of other players who were not did not have the career of Tom Brady.
Yep. And I agree with Northfius. JJ won't suck. JJ's going to be the guy. So I think it's wonderful. I think this move was great. I'm glad it happened.
And it has.
Now on to theme 2. This week in Vikings land.
Yep. Our grab bag of topics, Dave. Weekly section. First one, going to take the temperature of the Vikings place kicking today. And when Will Reichard went on the short-term injured reserve November 5th, I believe it was, we talked about this on the show, and the Vikings signed John Parker Romo for his replacement. And I said, great, guy seems to have a big leg. Did well with the San Antonio Brahmas in the XFL. But I had questions, and I'm sure others did, about when it, for a guy who had never kicked in an NFL game ever, regular season game, like, how is he going to handle kicking in pressure situations with big filled stadiums, with thousands and thousands of screaming people? And that when you miss, you might only get one opportunity a game to do what you do. And if you miss it, everybody's going to be pointing the finger at you that you suck. Mm-hmm. Well, he's done just fine. More than fine, really. Made all his field goals, 8 for 8. Did miss one extra point, which gives you like PTSD of Greg Joseph, but still, the 8 for 8, the field goals, perfect so far. He has kicked in in pressure situations. And against the Jacksonville game, he accounted for all of the Vikings points in a day where they could either turned over the ball when they got in the red zone, or they just couldn't cash in with a touchdown in the red zone. He contributed all to our points, and that was big. And then, of course, the overtime kick last week against Chicago. So pressure situations for John Parker Romo. Now, he has been a bit fortunate in that he hasn't had to make, like I said a few weeks ago, the real difficult kicks, I think. Of his 8 kicks, the longest has been 45 yards. So very reasonable distances that Parker Romo has been kicking from. But anyway, he's made them all. So that's great. That is not what we're used to seeing from Vikings place kickers. And if you count his kicks and Will Reichard's kicks before he got hurt, get this. From Vikings place kickers in 2024, they have missed 3 kicks in total, 1 extra point and 2 field goals, which Reichard missed in his last game before he went on short-term IR with the quad injury. That's a 94% conversion rate on field goals and extra points. Unheard of by a Vikings place kicker in recent memory. So, and hopefully I haven't just jinxed them by saying that, but
it's be all your fault.
Yeah, it will be.
It's one of the special things about this season. When have we ever had not just 1, but 2 very good kickers? And it's odd. It's, that we're not holding our breath and going, oh no. Well, no, extra point. Is he going to make it?
Yes, that is true. I think Reichard is eligible after this game to be have his 21-day practice window kicking in. So we haven't heard how his rehab is doing, how he's doing. At least I haven't heard anything so far. I don't think Kellenall has been asked since he went on short-term IR, but I hope that somebody does ask him this week about Reichard and how he's doing with the quad to see what the timetable might be for him to return, because I do want him to return. And I think that but I don't think he's going to be coming back right away, even though he'd be eligible to come back after this game. I think we're going to see Parker Romo as the Vikings place kicker for the next few weeks. Although I'm wishing Will Reichard a speedy recovery, but so far, Parker Romo has done the job, and hopefully he can continue to do so.
Davey, nobody's going to go back that far, but yes, 73. But even those guys miss kicks, and no way did they have the range. Now,
no.
I don't know. Andrew asked, so what do they do when Reichard's ready to come back with Romo? I think they say, thanks for the service. We'll keep you on the roller decks.
Yeah, or they put him on the practice squad, perhaps. But
it's another spot they eat up. But yeah, that's going to be something.
Yeah, but yeah, Romo will not be still with the team when Reichard is healthy and ready to go. But that could take a while. Like, I don't think you want Reichard to swing that leg once until he is 100% healthy with the quad, and that could take a while.
Well, we'll find out. Hopefully, it was just a major bruise or something.
Northeast, Rick Danmeyer, I sure do remember him, and I didn't think he was a very good kicker.
G-Mac, can we keep 2 kickers? Somebody might want to trade for one. That is an idea. See if there's a trade. Well, you can't trade this time of year.
No.
Darn it. Hey, it is what it is. It's one of them things. Now, John Parker Romo has definitely earned himself a spot on a team next year.
Or the opportunity to kick for a team.
Right.
And a legit opportunity to do so. Yeah. I don't think he had that this year, this training camp with the Vikings. I think they were, we needed somebody to push Reichard, but Reichard's our guy. I think that was.
We drafted him. He's going to play.
Yeah.
But I do believe there's enough needy teams that could use a better kicker, and they're going to look at, hey, he's kicked everything he's, been given, and he only missed 1 extra point.
So far.
And and versus our guy who's only hitting, 80% or whatever. So we'll see. I think he's going to get an opportunity.
Mark Mosley, last guy I can remember, last of the straight-on kickers, and I think Dan Meyer would have been the last one previous to him. But Mosley and Dan Meyer played; they were sort of the same amount, because Mosley kicked for 17, 18 years or some damn thing. He was around a long time because he was actually pretty good. Dan Meyer was horrible, and he didn't last as long in the NFL.
All right, now on to the next tidbit.
Yes. This one isn't such good news. Ivan Pace Jr. goes on the short-term injured reserve with a hamstring issue when he did the involuntary splits early in the game against Chicago. Big loss for the Vikings. Pace, I was surprised his snap counts, the way his snap counts are right now, he's basically playing 50% of the defensive snaps. So Blake Cashman is the inside linebacker playing like all the time. Ivan Pace is not. But Brian Flores has carved out a role for Ivan Pace. He's got him doing what he does best, which is basically, hey, Ivan, find the running back, go get him, find the quarterback, go get him, knock both of them into next Wednesday. That is what Ivan Pace is best at. Downhill, go at somebody, tear their head off. And Brian Flores has got him in that role. Run blitzes, particularly on pass blitzes. Last year, after his first year as an undrafted rookie free agent, the question kind of was, okay, the league's seen him for a year. What's Pace going to do in year two? Well, he's built on it, and he's become, I think, even a better player. 59 tackles up to this point, 6 tackles for loss, 3 sacks. And so, again, that is even though he's playing 50% of the defensive snaps, Dave, this is a significant loss to a very good Vikings defense. And particularly on the pass rush side of things, because Pro Football Focus had him as the 5th highest pass rush grade amongst inside linebackers. They also had him number 1 in pass rush win rate. So, and his 15 pressures on 62. He had 15 pressures on 62 pass rush attempts, so which is hella good. And so the Vikings are going to replace him with Camus Grugier-Hill. It looks like he's going to be the guy taking most of the snaps. And then Jamin Davis, they signed with Washington. It sounds like he might be the guy coming in eventually on more obvious pass rushing situations, because Davis's strength is blitzing and rushing the passer. So that's going to be, looks like how they're going to work on addressing the loss of Pace, but it's going to be hard to replace Pace. And I think that, I like what Grugier-Hill in particular has done for the Vikings. I think he's filled in admirably when he's had to for both Cashman and now Pace, but maybe we won't notice it tomorrow against the Colts, but I think over 3 or 4 games, I think this loss will be felt by Pace, where with Grugier-Hill and Davis just aren't going to be able to create as much havoc on their blitzes as Pace would. Maybe a few more missed tackles and not a stout play on the run. I hope that isn't the case, but that's what I think is going to be the case. And I find it interesting, Dave, that the Vikings signed Davis. And this kind of brings me to Brian Asamoah and him not being in the picture, because if you look at Asamoah, when we drafted him, and look, size-wise, he's almost a carbon copy of Ivan Pace. And his play style coming out of Oklahoma, you would think he would thrive in the kind of role that Flores has with Pace right now, which is like, go find the ball carrier, go find the quarterback, go get him. Don't worry so much about coverage. I'm just going to get you to play downhill and do what you do best. And yet they signed Davis, and it looks like they might play him a bit, even though he would have just arrived in Minnesota Wednesday and doesn't know the defense and doesn't know the area. So I think it is, I think, an indictment on Asamoah's play so far that the Vikings did not turn to him as a replacement for Pace, as opposed to Camus Grugier-Hill, and it looks like Jamin Davis coming in as well.
Without a doubt, it's Ivan Pace is special, and that he plays like Mighty Mouse or whatever you want to call it. He's small, but he has no fear. And that helps with his pass rushing and run stopping. He just literally has no fear. He's going to run through some 6'5", 300-pound guard like he's nothing. And that's cool. As far as Asamoah, that draft was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
We'll just chalk it up to that. That draft was horrible. But Asamoah's on special teams. That's where you can find him.
And as Norpheus mentioned, I think it was Norpheus below, he did have a nice return of the blocked field goal last week, which and set us up for nice field position on that blocked field goal. But when that's your top play of the year, and you were a third-round draft pick and one of the top 100 draft picks in the 2022 draft, not really much to write home about.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm curious about Davis. I look forward to seeing him. He's a bigger version. Let's see how he does. He was a first rounder, I believe.
Yes, he was. First rounder.
Washington said, well, we're going to make you an outside linebacker. And he's played inside linebacker his whole life. So we'll see. And yes, G-Mac, another draftee that, well, he can play. He just can't start. Play special teams. Yay. But I think Flores is going to have it figured out. It's not going to be a big deal. Now, we're going to miss Pace. Wish he was here. Hopefully he won't be gone long. But you saw when they showed, or at least I did, it was quarterback's view from behind the quarterback, and they saw he got squunched and did involuntary splits, and you saw his hammy just vibrate and knew exactly what it was. Mm-hmm. It was not pleasant. No. I'm sure. But he will be back. It's a healable injury.
It is.
Mm-hmm. All right. To the next tidbit. This one was the toughest one to find picks, and I didn't find that many.
I bet you didn't. With all the talk about, I wonder what we got. With all the talk
McQuaide.
about, with all the talk about the Daniel Jones signing on Wednesday, the Vikings made a couple of moves that nobody really mentioned that I could see. And what they did on Wednesday was they added Jake McQuaide to the active 53 roster.
They had to because they'd already used his call-ups.
3. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But in order to do that, they waived rookie edge rusher Gabe Murphy to do so. And which was interesting because Murphy had just been activated from the injured reserve that same week. And interesting because when Murphy was one of like the high profile undrafted rookie free agent signings the Vikings made right after the draft. I saw some draft experts figured he'd be drafted in the 3rd or 4th round in last April, but his length, short T-Rex arms, that cost him. He didn't get drafted at all, which was fine by the Vikings. They ended up signing him, and things were going really well for him. He was one of like the breakout guys during training camp and OTAs. We were hearing lots of good things from the Vikings beat writers about him, what an impact he was making, how he was flashing all the time. You and I, Dave, were really excited to see how he was going to do in preseason. And then I think the day of the preseason game the first preseason game against Las Vegas, we heard Murphy was not going to play. And he didn't play the whole entire preseason. And right after the preseason, the Vikings put him on the short-term IR. I never did really see what the injury was, but in the release last week, the Vikings did say it was a knee injury. So when they activated him from the injured, when they opened up his 21-day window and activated him, I was thinking, what are the Vikings going to do with Gabe Murphy? Because again, during training camp, he was one of the guys that there was lots of questions, like were the Vikings going to keep him or Jihad Ward, or him and somebody else, or Patrick Jones? Were they going to trade Patrick Jones because Murphy was looking better? And so what the Vikings did was they waived Gabe Murphy. And a little bit saddened by that. I don't think he with the way the Vikings edge room has gone right now, Dave, I don't think that Murphy was going to see the field anyway, but I haven't seen him added to the practice squad yet, which seems odd. I haven't seen him sign with anybody yet, so I don't know what's going on there, but I do hope that the Vikings find a way to bring him back in the off season, because the edge room, even though it has played very well this year, Patrick Jones II is a free agent after the season is over. I am not convinced that the Vikings are going to re-sign him.
So is Ward.
Ward's on a 1-year deal. So I think the Vikings are going to need to add depth to the edge room. And I think I hope that Murphy is somebody that they can find a way to keep and see if he can build on what we were hearing about during OTAs and training camp. And if he can somehow find a role as a situational edge rusher and can get some snaps in year 2. Because you're looking at Dallas Turner right now, we have high hopes for him, but he has done very little as a rookie so far this year. So there's even questions about.
Turner's different. It's like, who are you going to take off the field so he can play when everybody on the field is playing balls out?
Yeah. I think sometimes they could look at switching out Jones for Turner, because Jones started off the first 4 games. He was playing really well, racking up the sacks, was noticeable. Then he went 5 games where 3 of them he didn't even register a pass pressure. Then he had the humongous game against the Titans, looked great. Last week, he was back to being invisible again. So he's kind of been up and down, and more down than up lately as the season goes on, which makes it kind of funny why Dallas Turner isn't getting more run at times. But I think Flores does trust the veterans a bit more than maybe the rookies at times. And so that's why Jones plays over Turner. Plus, Jones has been more productive than Turner throughout the season.
Yeah. It is what it is.
It is what it is.
Well, we'll get there eventually where Turner's playing, so I'm not worried about it. Yes. He's young, uber young, plenty of upside. It'll come around, and it didn't need to this year, thankfully.
Yes,
it's sort of nice to have that. Same with our JJ McCarthy, unfortunately. Drew's house busy. She was looking at buying the new Unreal hoodie today. So those things are nice, but I can't see paying what they ask for. Those things are expensive. All right, now to the next bit. Oh, our first draft slide.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Dave, I wanted to end off this week in Vikings land with something we haven't talked about since the regular season started, which is the 2025 NFL draft, which is a lot different than last year, I think, as most people can remember, when it seemed like we talked about the draft and who the Vikings were going to draft and what draft position they were going to have in the first round and beyond, like every fucking week. And, there's a few reasons for that. One was that the Vikings had decided not to extend Kirk Cousins, so we had kind of a lame duck QB as our starter, and it seemed pretty clear that we were going to say goodbye to him, or there was a very good chance we were going to say goodbye to him. So the question was, what are the Vikings going to do if Cousins isn't back in 2024? And also that dovetailed into the Vikings need to draft a franchise quarterback, and we had a situation where the 2024 quarterback class was extremely strong. So there was a very there was lots of options for lots of teams, including the Vikings, to pick from. And then, of course, we went 1-4 to start the season. So immediately the talk went from playoffs to what's our draft position going to be. And this year, though, with the Vikings right now at 9-2, there's no talk about draft. And we did draft JJ McCarthy, so the franchise quarterback question is out the window. But when you're 9-2, the only questions really are about how far are we going to go in the playoffs when we make it? So there hasn't been any talk about the draft, but I did want to address it this week just a little bit, just to get us going for the draft and when eventually it comes time to talk about it. And right now, I want to look at if you're to look at it, what are kind of the key roster positions that we need to address in the 2025 draft, and what players college prospects we should be looking at as potential players that the Vikings should go after. And first off, I think cornerback is an obvious position that we've got to upgrade on. Our top three cornerbacks, Byron Murphy Jr., Stephon Gilmore, and Shaq Griffin, they are all on one-year deals. I am not convinced that any of them will be back in 2025. And beyond that, you've got Caleb Evans just got waived last week. He's not on the team anymore. Kyrie Jackson's dead, unfortunately. And Mekhi Blackman is coming off a serious ACL injury. And so I think he'll be good in 2025, but we're not too sure. So there's a ton of work for Kwesi Adofo-Mensah to do to that position in the offseason. And that you got to think that is a focus for the few draft picks we have, including the first rounder. You got to think that cornerback is going to be one that's going to be looked at very closely by the Vikings front office, and that they have to address it because we got a bunch of guys there that we do need to, we've got to build up the depth and the talent at the cornerback position. I think a second one, Drew just mentioned it, is the defensive line, particularly the interior. Again, when you're looking at guys that aren't around for a long time, Jonathan Bullard, who I like, and I think he does a good job at what he does, is on a one-year deal. And he's probably going to be on a one-year deal for the rest of his career for whoever he plays for. That also goes for Jerry Tillery, also on a one-year deal.
And he's playing the best of his career right now.
I like Tillery. I just don't know if the Vikings would bring him back or what the price point is going to be. But he's on a one-year deal. He's going to be a free agent. Harrison Phillips has just been extended. But beyond him, you've got – and Jalen Redmond, who is a guy who's playing not a big amount of snaps, but he's also – he's going to be a free agent at the end of at the end of the season, and no guarantee he comes back to add to the depth of our room. So you got Phillips, Ivan Drake Rodriguez, who's only been dressed for one game and has yet to play a snap, and then Taki Taimani, who was playing a little bit but is now an injured reserve. I mean, so that's what you've got. Again, a lot of work for the Vikings to do there. And I think that particularly the interior defensive line, the Vikings, they need to add not only depth to that room, but we would like to see them add a difference maker on the interior, on the defensive line. A defensive lineman
type. Yep.
Exactly. A defensive lineman who's not only just can eat up blockers and help your linebackers make plays and make some tackles themselves on the run, but also be a pass rushing presence. We don't have a defensive lineman on the team right now who is a pass rushing presence. We do not get much pass rushing out of any of our defensive linemen. If you got a guy like that, that would take this defense up to another level. So that has got to be a focus for the Vikings in the 2025 draft. And I think the other position that looks a bit potentially barren right now going into the offseason is running back. Aaron Jones has been really good for us, but again, he's on a one-year deal. Even though he looks like he's fresh, he's got lots of mileage left. He will turn 30 in December. He turned 31 next December. Do you bring him back for even a 2-year deal when we know how quickly running backs fall off the cliff? I don't know. Cam Akers and his 2 repaired Achilles, he is also just a 1-year deal. I don't know if he'll be back next year. I'm not even convinced that Ty Chandler, who is eligible whose rookie contract would expire next year, or he's got 1 more year left on his rookie contract, so he could be back in 2025. I'm not convinced that he'll actually be back because he's lost the number 2 running back role. He's actually older than Cam Akers. He'll be 27 next year. How do the Vikings feel about him? I really think that running back, it'd be nice. The Vikings have to look at, I think, finding a young running back who's a potential stud, who can take over the number 1 running back role, and you don't have to worry about him for 3 or 4 years. But just with our amount of draft capital right now, I don't know you're probably not drafting a running back in the first round. Can you find a stud in the fifth with the 2 5th rounders that we have, or the 6th rounders? I don't know, but those are areas I think that the draft wise, the Vikings really have to hone in on. I don't know, Dave, if you feel I've missed any.
Oh, you did one, but I'll get there. When it comes to running backs, it was running backs are a dime a dozen. You can get them. They're young. And it was that way. Well, now we see with Saquon Barkley and some of the other ones, some of the bell cow back style is coming back. And with a few key running backs, they're playing into their 30s and being productive. I wondered if possibly next year they go with Jones again, give him an extension of some sort, and trust that he'll do that and keep Akers. Because Akers, I think, is doing a good job for what Akers does. Akers is more of a power back style. But we'll see. It's going to be this year's magic, like I said. But next year, we hope the window's open. But there are spots we still need, and we hope to either fill it with free agency or with the draft, and there's not much in the draft. And Terry Timothy. What in the world? No, we don't want to watch. Sorry. But you asked me, are there any positions you missed? Oh, yes.
I know I missed one.
I want this guy. Interior offensive line. Hey, we have Dalton Reisner right now. He's only on a 1-year deal. Are they going to bring him back? I think he's worse than Ingram. We have Ed Ingram, who got benched in his 3rd season. Obviously, he's under contract next year. Mm-hmm. We have Garrett Bradbury, who Matthew Collar's falling in love with because his
PF grades aren't that bad this year.
His run blocking, his pass blocking aren't the greatest, but his run blocking are outstanding. Now, where he gets it is that Bradbury's this year calling the line, the blocking. And as a whole, the blocking's doing better than it did in the previous 3 years when he wasn't calling the blocking. And because the quarterback was the previous 3 years. This year, he is. Well, he's a smart dude. And generally, that's the case for centers. You want smart centers. But his weakness has always been the big dudes in the middle if they can get pass rush on him because they're going to push him back. Otherwise, his run blocking is great. The way he can identify a defense and call blocking for the line has been outstanding. The way he's worked with Sam Darnold to make him have his best season ever. The way he's probably working on the side with J.J. McCarthy or will be working with J.J. McCarthy is something you want. But he's only got 1 more year on his contract as well. And then you have, of course, left guard. Come on.
Yep. Well, Blake Brandle's there.
Blake Brandle. Yes, you're a breakout player for the 4 years running. Blake Brandle. Who's doing okay? Nothing great, just okay. But it's his first year at left guard, so we'll see. And who do you have as backups? You got Michael Jurgens. He'll go into his 2nd year. Okay, he's backup center. Okay, we'll see how that goes. You have Dan Feeney, who's on his last year of his contract. He's an old-timer. He's over 30. He's just a backup break glass, in an emergency break glass type of guard.
Yeah.
And then you have Walter Rouse, who could possibly slide in and play guard. When he was drafted last year, I was calling him a guard. Everybody's, no, he's a tackle, Dave. He's a tackle. No, he's built like a guard. I suspected he'll play eventually guard in this league at this level, but they've kept him at tackle. So But the interior O-line is the one spot we can need to improve. Hey, if we can get Trey Smith to do it, well, yeah, baby, we're there.
Yeah.
Because that one and big improvement is probably similar to getting like Hutchinson when we did from Seattle. That's the closest to it as I can think. But we'll see how that goes. Northfiest Matthew Collar should just keep his big shoes and clown makeup on. But it is what it is. That's the one spot you missed that I wanted to hit on. As you knew, you set me up for that. I saw that coming from a mile. That was a softball straight over the middle of the plate. All right. Now on to theme 3. The game.
Week
game. 13.
Week 13. So, like what we talked about the Vikings schedule when it came out, and you're trying to look at the teams and what might be the soft spots and the hard spots of that schedule. And so, the Vikings took care of the start of the season where they went up against the hard part, right, Dave, of the 2024 schedule. They went 5-1, and it was against a bunch of teams that we figured were going to be playoff contenders this season. That has turned out to not be the case in a couple, like the Jets. But anyway, that's the way it goes every year. And then the Vikings also have taken care of business so far in what was supposed to be like the easy part of their schedule, where they've gone 4-1 against a bunch of teams we mostly didn't figure were going to be playoff contenders in 2024. So, and before the regular season started, our opponent tomorrow, the Arizona Cardinals, were the final team but Minnesota was going to face during the easy portion of the schedule. But I don't think they didn't look like they were going to be a playoff contender when the season started. I don't think anybody had them doing that. But you fast forward 3 months, and now this game doesn't look very easy because the Cardinals have been playing pretty good football since late October, and they have a great chance of winning the mediocre NFC West and making the postseason. And even though the Vikings have 3 more wins, the old Football Outsiders, now FTM DVOA metric, if you look at weighted DVOA, which tries to figure out how a team is playing now as opposed to over the course of a season, because they make the games that the team's recent games more important than the earlier ones, the Vikings have the 7th best weighted DVOA right now. Arizona has the 9th best. So maybe there's not much separating these teams as the records would suggest.
Vegas probably thinks it's the same because it's the lines down the Vikings favored by 3.5, which is roughly even on a neutral field. Yeah.
What has been encouraging for me in the past few games, Dave, is that offensively, I think the Vikings are starting to reach their potential. The points haven't always been there, but they've gone over 400 yards in total offense in 3 of their last 4 games. And last week against, I think, a pretty good Bears defense, they had a season high 452 yards. Sam Darnold's had the best game of his season, I think, as a Viking. And the passing and the rushing attacks were both working well. And we scored 30 points and that's just the 3rd time we've done that in 11 games. So the offense is looking very good. But I think that it's going to be tough to repeat that against the Cardinals defense that head coach Jonathan Gannon, who's a defensive guy, has playing really well right now. And it's an interesting defense, Dave, because remember the Miami Dolphins in 72 when they had the perfect season, they had the no-name defense. The Cardinals kind of have a no-name defense. Outside of Budda Baker, I don't think anybody who doesn't watch the Cardinals on a regular basis would have a good idea who plays on their defense. But they've only given up 16 points. They've given up 16 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. And like Flores, Gannon likes to line up 6 guys on the line of scrimmage, and he's got the linebackers in the A gaps. and he has the offense, and he's trying to create chaos and have the offensive line trying to figure out who is blitzing and who isn't. What I kind of noticed in the couple of games I watched with the Cardinals is that, unlike Flores, Gannon likes to send safeties and corners on his blitzes, not the linebackers like the Vikings do. So the Vikings they're going to have to be ready for that. And they're going to have to be ready for Budda Baker, because I think he's the head of the snake of this defense. He'll blitz from anywhere, and he comes flying in, much like Ivan Pace in a lot of ways, on run plays with bad intentions. He's a menace on that defense. And the Vikings, or the Cardinals' run defense has been pretty tough of late after being very poor stopping the run in the first half of the season. The Dolphins ran over them a few weeks ago, October 27th. They had 150 rush yards. But in the 5 games that they've played since October 21st, which includes that Dolphins game, the most, other than that 150 rush yards they gave up against Miami, the most rush yards they've given up in the other 4 games is 79. And the Vikings run game hasn't been very effective. Last week against Chicago it was, but Chicago has a pretty poor run defense. So I don't know how the run game is going to get going in this one. It'd be important if it does, but I think it's going to be tough. So I think really the Vikings offense, if we're going to be moving the ball, it's going to come down to the passing effectively. And it starts with the offensive line. We got to hold up against the Cardinals' aggressive blitzing ways. So Sam Darnold has time to get the ball to the guys on those long developing routes that we talked about earlier that the Vikings like to run. And I think if we can get that time, there's opportunities there, because the Cardinals' corners are Sean Murphy Bunting, Starling Thomas IV, and Garrett Williams. They can be picked on, I think. But Darnold, he needs the time to do it. And if he gets it, watch out. I think offensively, when you call that passing game, we know that Justin Jefferson only had 2 catches for like 27 yards or whatever last week. I expect Kevin O'Connell is going to try to get Jefferson more involved in the game and see if he can get him rolling after only having 2 catches last week. And I think he hasn't had a touchdown catch in like 5 or 6 weeks. So he's due. So offensively, passing, that's going to be a key for us. I think as for the Cardinals offense, Dave, their strength, I think, matches up nicely with the Vikings defensive strength. They like to run the ball with James Conner and Trey Benson. And then you got Kyler Murray doing some design runs and then jailbreak plays where he scrambles and turns something into nothing. And they've done a pretty good job of it most of the season. But last week against Seattle, the Seahawks completely shut the Cardinals run game down. They had a season low 49 rushing yards. And we all know the Vikings run defense. It's number 1 in the league in rushing yards given up. Only 3 teams have run for more than 100 yards on us in the 11 games this season. So they've been very stout against the run. And with the Cardinals, if the Cardinals can't get the running game going, they're going to be in a lot of poor down and distance situations, just like they were against Seattle. And that didn't go well for them. The offensive line couldn't hold up. Murray was under a lot of duress all game. And of course, the Cardinals only scored 6 points against the Seahawks defense that's kind of middle of the pack this year as far as points given up. So, if you force Kyler Murray as good as a quarterback as he can be, if you force them to pass the ball, that's not what they like to do. They're only 30th in pass attempts this season. They like to build off the running game, feed Connor, who I heard in the Seattle telecast leads the league in missed tackles with like 68, which seems really because he is not an elusive guy. I think a lot of those he's breaking tackles with his strength. But, if the Vikings defense does what it's done pretty much all year, which is eliminate the opponent's running game and force the Cardinals to pass the ball, to move the ball, that's not what Arizona wants to do, and it's not what it's best at doing. And I think if that happens, we're going to be okay. They do have tight end Trey McBride. He's excellent. And he's having a big year this year. He's got 61 catches, which is the same as Jefferson. Rookie Marvin Harrison Jr. has had a solid rookie season, I think, but he hasn't been like Randy Moss-like. And then they got Michael Wilson, who's like a big-bodied guy, but he's not like a stud. So I don't think that the Cardinals are built to kill you on the passing game. And I think it also helps the Vikings defense last week. They played Caleb Williams. He's a quarterback who's got the escapability and knack for making off-script plays that's quite similar to Murray's. The Vikings had some trouble with that last week, but I think they learned a lot playing against Williams, what works, what doesn't work, and against a quarterback with that kind of mobility and creativity. So I think they'll handle it better this week against Murray at home than they did last week against the Bears. That's my feeling right now. Here's a stat I did not know, Dave, and I didn't like hearing it when I did, but the Cardinals have not beat Minnesota in Minnesota since 1977 when they were the St. Louis Cardinals. So that spans 12 games over 47 years. I hate hearing those kind of stats because I know it means nothing tomorrow, but I always feel like the team is due, eventually
it's been 47 years. They got to win one.
Yeah. So I hated to hear that stat, but even though
that's the best picture I can find, folks, of that game.
I'm impressed you found one picture. But I just feel that even with that terrible stat going into this game, I think that the Vikings defense has been so consistent in stopping the run this season and so good at doing it other than the Rams game and the Lions game. I think that they're going to shut down the run and they're going to force the Cardinals into a pass first kind of game. That is not their jam. And the Vikings are going to come out with another win here. And I do have, I feel good about our ability to pass protect based on what I've seen all season, even without Darrisaw, and getting those chunk plays. And particularly if you get Jefferson going early against those corners, it could be a tough day for the Cardinals at the bank.
And we've all been waiting for Jefferson to have one of those bust-out games where he has 200 yards and 2 touchdowns or 3 touchdowns and just blows it out, and I have a feeling this is going to be it. Now, you forgot one other factor that plays into this game.
Bring it up, Dave.
We've been on the road straight for 3 weeks. We are now at home. The fans haven't seen the Vikings play at home in almost a month. They're going to be absolutely rocking it in U.S. Bank tomorrow. And it's going to make it difficult for that not quality offensive line of the Cardinals to get things squared away. And Kyler Murray may have a hard time himself, as well as everybody else on that offense, because it's going to be loud, very, very loud. So I think that is the one thing that even if it was all even, it's going to push the Vikings over, and it's not even. We've got better receivers. We've got a better quarterback when it comes to how he's playing this season. We've got a much better defense as a whole. I think Vikings are going to come out and we'll go to double-digit wins.
Yeah,
we need to keep up with the kittens.
Well, it's not just the kittens, right? With the Packers,
keep putting winning from below. Too.
The kittens keep on putting on pressure from above, right? You got to keep winning. And the crowd issue is a great point, Dave, because I think that we've seen in games against Houston, even against the Lions, although we lost that one, the crowd was a factor. They created communication issues for the opposing offense, caused some pre-snap penalties that got those offenses behind in the down and distance situations, and those can be drive killers when you can get offenses backing up 5 yards and another 5. So, and I find that I've found this year, maybe it's my imagination, but I have found that the Vikings crowd, and I asked for it, has been a factor in games where their crowd noise is having an impact, just like it used to in the old Metrodome.
Right. Whether it be natural or piped in.
Yeah.
My guess.
Yeah. Sure enough.
Nah, but it is. I think it's going to be a good game tomorrow. It's going to be fun to watch. We're going to, should be a blast. We'll find out.
We will. And now you're going to promo what?
Yes. Live at the 2-minute warning. We'll go live tomorrow, and I'll be there, run you through the final 2 minutes, call play-by-play. However, I won't get the game live. I've got to stream it on YouTube. Why? Because the coverage stops at Dallas this time. Doesn't go any further south. I've got Houston dominating my viewing area. So I will be there. We will discuss it. We'll all react together. Darren will join. Tyler will join. We won't have Sal. She'll be out tailgating, and she's all prepped for that. She had to bring her cooler full of beer and seltzers and all the other fun stuff she puts in it inside because they were starting to explode. It's going to be a bit brisk outside tomorrow in Minnesota. So, yes, Aaron, I have a Sunday ticket via YouTube. So, it is what it is. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. What a great crowd we've had today. I hope everybody's Thanksgiving went well and that you're starting to get into the Christmas mood and spirit. With that, any final words there, Darren?
Well, Dave, I do want to express my condolences to Matt Eberflus and the Chicago Bears. I feel this is a sad day with him being fired yesterday for Viking fans because I was enjoying seeing more years of Eberflus and Bears ineptitude in all games, in one-score games, and in the NFC North. What was he, 5 for 19 in the NFC North?
It was bad. Yes.
And he did beat the Vikings once last year at home, but yeah, we were Dave. You and I were hoping to see many more years of Matt Eberflus as the Bears head coach, and that unfortunately is not going to happen anymore.
Nope, and that puts we're going to watch the Kwesi O'Connell hiring because it was paired up perfectly with the Poles Eberflus firing, and obviously we win that race. So, what do we say, brother?
We say SKOL Vikings, baby, and thanks everybody for watching and commenting.
Yes, SKOL Vikings.
Like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and rate us on your favorite podcast aggregator. Darren and Dave, thank you for watching this episode of Two Old Bloggers. We look forward to seeing you on every show on the new Vikings First and SKOL. You can find our podcasts as part of the Fans First Sports Network. Sports takes for the fan, from the fan. SKOL, everybody!